Morning, folks. Timber Drifter here. Trying a beat up old bulldog full of Orlick golden sliced. Light rain beginning to fall, and I'm enjoying the view of the ferns, ostrich ferns that are starting to turn golden. And some of the maples out in the bog are starting to turn fiery red. Red squirrel's telling me that this is not my area, it's theirs. That's what that chattering was. Chickadees are around, checking on what I'm doing. The ravens have flown over, watching me. It's been an eventful morning. I've got my camp set up in an area I used to camp here on my friend's property where I live. It's a little small level space near a pond with a very large tamarack tree and other trees kind of overhanging, and I can stay in the shade there. And I've got poison ivy, so I like to stay in the shade. I don't like to sweat or be in the sun. Perfect spot for that. But a little bit before 6 this morning, I was just rolling out of my hammock, and I heard that sound that's so common around here. Squealing tires and brakes, and then that sort of final thud. Now, the road is only about maybe 50 yards or less from where I'm camped, and there's a screen of balsam fir pretty thick between myself and the road, so I can't see them and they can't see me, but I can still hear the cars quite well. And I know all the deer around here, and it's when somebody hits something here, it's more than likely a deer. There's so many of them. And I know all the deer that live on this property. There's about 5 of them most of the time. As the year changes, more come in, you know, their territory moves a little bit, they eat different things. So I threw on some boots and grabbed a knife and ran out through the woods, busted some brush to get to where this guy was just starting to pick up pieces of his completely destroyed grill on his new fancy car that he just bought about a week ago, he told me. The car seemed mechanically okay, but the grill did its job and protected the radiator and busted into many pieces. And the deer was hit solidly and thrown a ways and rolled, and it was quite a distance from the car. In fact, it was right next to our mailbox. And I walked over and looked at it. It's a yearling that I've known since he had spots on. Hope that breeze isn't messing up the audio too much. Yeah, I've known this deer since he had spots on. In fact, in the spring I walked within about 5 foot of him out here in the grass. He's just a yearling, little guy. I know his mother, she had twins last year, and one of them was eaten by coyotes on the back side of this very hill last year. And his sister's still around. I didn't see that she had any young this year. But yeah, little yearling. I walked up and he looked like he was in pretty good shape. I could tell a front leg was broken and his hide was a bit scuffed on the rib cage. But I put my foot on his neck, stepped on it just to make sure he was dead and he wasn't going to jump up. He didn't move when I stepped on his neck, and I bent over and looked into his eye, and I could see the early morning clouds from sunrise and the trees reflected in his eye. That watery, dark little pool. And I wondered if that was the last thing he saw. asked the guy if he wanted the deer, and he looked at me like I'm a weirdo, because I am, you know, because eating roadkill isn't something that normal people do. But this is fresh meat, man, and I'm a opportunivore. I eat what I can when I have the opportunity. And this deer is young, so the meat will be sweet. But he didn't want the deer, so I grabbed it and drug it up over this hill and onto the backside. And took care of it. If you're offended by talk of eating cute little animals or the idea of butchering something, then you probably want to stop right here. But I used a technique that I've only done one other time and not for many years. I read about it in an old book. One of those books that include letters from frontiers people and things like that. And the camera is shaking because the wind is blowing the mount around a little bit. Anyway, I used this knife, which is, some of you have seen this before. I made it. It was my prototype for what everyone calls a bushcraft knife. This is my version of it. It has quite a stout point. It's nice for drilling holes in wood and also prying between the spine and the rib cage to pop the ribs free. Now, the edge did turn in a couple of small spots. Right there, you can see that, maybe. I can fix that with a steel and a strop. It didn't chip, it just turned a bit. And that's from cutting through the spine, possibly the joints. But it'll still pretty much shave hair. Not clean, but it does take some off. So I think I've got the heat treat down for this particular steel. I'll be making more of these this winter. For real this time. But anyway, technique I used to butcher this deer. I laid him on his side, belly toward me, stripped around the knees and the elbows, ran up the line between the where the white belly turns to brown hide. Anybody that skins deer knows what I'm talking about. And then up the middle, and I started working the skin off with my, pulling with this hand and pushing with this hand. And I skinned it out everywhere except I left the head attached on the hide, and I left the hide attached at the tail. So the deer's body was free everywhere but the head and the tail. I then spread the hide out under it like a tarp and proceeded to break down the deer on top of the clean hide. Not the hair side, obviously. Took the lower legs off, threw them in a bucket I brought with me. Took the back straps out. You just roll the deer back and forth to do this. It'll roll on the hide. And then I cut up in the throat, reached in and grabbed the esophagus, pulled the esophagus down to the sternum, stuck the knife in the sternum, split the sternum, pried the rib cage apart till it cracked so it'll stay open a little bit. Reached in and cut out the heart and liver. I knew the guts were exploded, so I didn't want to gut it and get exploded guts all over everything, including the hide. So yeah, I removed that stuff and then I started cutting the ribs free. And then I went ahead and pulled the body off to the side of the hide, let the guts out, and used the esophagus to pull it out. I don't split the pelvis. I usually just cut through the spine right above the pelvis and then cut through the spine again right below the ribs, so you have that saddle for stew meat. Roast the whole thing, stew it. And I cut the neck off for the same purpose. broke the ribs out and used the point of the knife to separate the rib from the spinal column. Unfortunately, I had to leave one side of the ribs. It was just totally shattered and very bruised and very bloody. If I'd killed the deer, I'd use it, but I'm just scavenging. So, anyway, it's very likely that this deer bedded down less than 20 yards from where I ended up butchering it. It was coming back across the road from their morning feeding area. They like to sleep up here on this hill at night. Sometimes you'll find them up here during the day, but that's rare this time of year. There's my pack. Also, just something that I do, I'm sure I picked this up, or the concept of it, from natives somewhere, reading about natives, I'm not sure. But I liked the idea, and it's something that I do as well. I put some nice little flowers that I know the deer like to browse. Put that in its mouth, and I placed its head on a stump facing east. That's it right there. And as I was butchering, of course, the flies are here already and doing their thing, and I was looking around on the ground, and you know, the mushrooms are breaking apart the rotten trees, and the squirrels are eating the mushrooms, and I was doing my thing. And it occurs to me, and it's occurred to me many times, we all have our jobs to do, you know. The flies aren't disgusting little creatures. What they're doing is beautiful and necessary, you know. So are the mushrooms. All of it. It's just how it works. It doesn't involve televisions and Budweiser, candy, Walmart. This is how things actually work. Everywhere else but where we mess around. Anyway, that deer likely slept in that lay last night. And I'm glad I was here. I'm glad that deer, well, it would have been used anyway, but I'm glad it didn't rot in a ditch. I'm glad I'm going to be able to eat it. And what I left behind, the ravens and chickadees and blue jays and gray jays and ants and carcass beetles and all those, they'll take care of it, and we'll feed them too, and they'll be happy to have it if they experience happiness. And if you ever spent much time around chickadees, I think you'll agree they do experience happiness. But yeah, been an eventful morning. I haven't even had time to comb my beard yet, obviously. I think I'm going to take one of those back straps and roll it in sea salt and crushed pepper and olive oil and let it sit in the fridge for a while, and maybe we'll have that tonight or tomorrow. That's enough. Doesn't need anything else. It's young and sweet. Yeah, I'm just here doing my job. Take care, folks.